Hola, hola. Probando audio, uno, dos.
Eres un profesional. Eres un profesional. Yo no sabía qué decir. Listos.
Good morning, good afternoon, and evening to everybody. I am Germán Dugarte Peña, Assistant Professor for the Computer and Engineering Department here at Universidad Carlos III de Madrid. Let me begin by warmly welcome you to this event named The Experts in Occupational Health and Safety Have the Word, organized by the researcher R&D for Smart Digital Transformation of Occupational Health and Safety, held by Universidad Carlos III de Madrid and the Regional Institute of Health and Safety at Work of the Community of Madrid. Organized also as a satellite event of the 5th International Conference on Information and Knowledge Systems, ESIX, which will be held tomorrow and the day after tomorrow in an online format. Thank you in advance to the organizers for having us. Today we are joined online by people mainly from Spain, but we also welcome warmly those who have registered from other countries of the European Union, France, Portugal, Italy, and the Netherlands, and from the American continent, as far as we know, from Mexico, Colombia, Venezuela, Peru, Chile, Honduras, and the United States of America. In our agenda today, we have 6 presentations. After each of the presentations, we will try to have a very short time for questions that we may receive from our attendees using the chat along with the streaming of the event. Please consider that for writing your questions in the chat, you must be logged in with a YouTube or Gmail account. However, as we will probably have more questions that we can answer in this limited period of time, I announce that we will have a space in our website where we will answer all the questions we can receive for each of the speakers, and we will send a link to you after the event. Regarding the order of presentations, first, Santiago Villalba, on behalf of the Regional Institute for Occupational Health and Safety of the Community of Madrid, will open the event. Chair organizing this event will present the Ventura project, the smart digitization of occupational health and safety. Afterwards, Dr. Carlos Torrecilla Salinas, head of the unit Digital Economy at the Joint Research Center of the European Commission in Sevilla, will make a presentation entitled A Delphi-Based Expert Judgment Method. Following Dr. Torrecilla, we will give way to Dr. Andrés Leonardo Martínez Ortiz, who will be joining us from Google Zurich, Switzerland, and has prepared a presentation entitled Kendall Cluster Analysis. We will then have a short break of 15 minutes, and we will return with the presentation by Dr. Lizardo Prieto González and engineer Andrei Garcia Cuadra, who have prepared a summary of the result of the pilot of the Agile Delphi app for the identification of OHS criteria. Afterwards, Dr. Antonio de Mescua, Deputy Director for Digital School of Engineering and Participation at Universidad Carlos III de Madrid, and myself, we will moderate the conversation with the experts attending this event. That is, you as our listeners will have the floor to open the debate about what we will have presented for you today. Finally, for those of you who want to stay and listen to us, the day will end with the presentation of our call for undergraduate final study works, aimed at students interested in doing their final work in the field of occupational health and safety, as well as a few presentations of current students who are completing their work under the umbrella of this researcher. Without taking up any more of your time, let's move on to today's first presentation by Santiago Villalba Arranz, who will open the event. Santiago is a specialist technician at the Regional Institute for Occupational Health and Safety of the Community of Madrid, where he develops training and research and development tasks in the area of knowledge and preventive culture. Santiago has an energy and mining engineering degree from the Polytechnic University of Madrid and a superior technician in occupational risk prevention, specializing in safety, industrial hygiene, ergonomics, and psychosociology. He has more than 30 years of experience in the energy, mines, and health and safety in both the private and public sectors. where he has been coordinator of energy infrastructure projects and optional director in international mining companies. In relation to his experience in information engineering, he has participated in the development of physical and mathematical modeling of energy and mining processes for their application in detail engineering. Welcome, Santiago. You have the word now. Thank you.
Aranz, and specialist technician in the Regional Institute for Occupational Health and Safety in the community. First of all, I would like to thank everyone, audience, speakers, for participating, in particular to the Carver University for making. Sorry, the sound. Okay. In particular to the Carlos the State University for making today's event possible. We live on a unprecedented time due to only mobile phones, computers. For this reason, our work is being focused on that. The question is, the management of change is part of the answer. What means to work is affect.
Seguimos con la siguiente.
Sorry, that they continue. The current they
¿A él? Yep. Continuamos.
que no comparta que no comparta la cámara, que esté solo con el audio.
¿Por qué no seguimos con la siguiente presentación? Deberíamos seguir con el siguiente punto y ya está. Va a seguir fallando.
Sí, 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 pero te da paso Germán. Primero Germán va a hablar. Venga, hasta ahora.
Empiezo de nuevo.
Dame un segundo, Santiago. Te presento, no te vuelvo a
Sí, sí.
presentar, solo pido disculpas y ya está.
Vale, no hay ningún problema.
¿No? Good morning. Again, I have to apologize for the technical issues that we have just had. We have tried to solve it, and Santiago Villalba is going to start again his presentation. Again, we apologize for any inconvenience that we have just had. Thank you very much. Santiago, you have the word then.
Thanks. Good morning. I am Santiago Villalba Arranz, and a specialist technician in the Regional Institute for Occupational Health and Safety of the Community of Madrid. First of all, I would like to thank everyone, audience and speakers for participating, in particular to the Carlos making today's event possible. We live in unprecedented time due to the extremely large amount of information coming from application of our mobile phones and computers. For this reason, the labor world has been forced to adopt new technologies and new ways of interacting. The question is how to do it with a guarantee of success. The management of change is part of the answer. What means work with and for people to affect firstly, we can start which along with adaptation and assimilation will allow European business to retain competitiveness. Secondly, investment in research and innovation is essential in addressing the current technology challenges. At the same time, it helps to develop and deploy solutions for societal challenges like occupational health and safety. Today's event has as objective the presentation of a firm proposal to generate specific prevention criteria, thus forming part of the growing development of interactive online tools, e-tools, in the field of occupational health. Through these tools, business activities of companies are made easier. Solutions are provided to occupational health, among others, advantages. With these tools, scientific, cultural, and social development can occur much faster. Consequently, the administration, companies, and social agents must prepare to be able to take advantage of these tools, so it to improve our mutual environment. This will ultimately benefit society in general. But I would like to highlight here the fundamental university have transmission of knowledge and their great influence on innovation and research. In relation to the information of digital era, we must not forget the ethical debate generated by the issue arising. For instance, the potential quality of data that can lead to bias. Both approaches are neither must we forget that artificial intelligence system require ethical basis in order to serve us better rather than the other way around. We will be the ones to program them. But will we be prepared to elucidate and answer the moral question that may arise on doing that? Trying to answer this question, the European Commission is currently working on a document concerning the ethical principles and procedures for artificial intelligence. Let's hope that we don't have to rely on it alone to make some decisions in this regard. That's all from me. Thanks a lot for your attention. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the event, and goodbye. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Santiago, for your presentation. We can then start with the next presentation by Dr. Maria Isabel Sanchez Segura, Maribel, who will present the Ventura project, the smart digitization of occupational health and safety. Dr. Maria Isabel Sanchez Segura is a full professor for the Computer Science Department at Carlos III University of Madrid. She holds a PhD in Computer Science, a Master of Science in Software Engineering, and a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science from the Polytechnical University of Madrid. She is Knowledge Management certified by the Knowledge Management Institute and an IEEE senior member. She leads the research line on processes and information technologies for the systemic governance of intelligent organizations, PROMIS, and she is currently director of the doctoral and master programs in computer science and technology at Carlos III University of Madrid. She is the head also of this researcher organizing this event. Welcome, Maribel, and the floor is yours then. Thank you.
As director of the R&D Chair for the Intelligent Digital Transformation of the Occupational Health and Safety, it is my honor to present today the context in which this event is framed. This chair has been created with a commitment to develop a permanent collaboration between Carlos III University and the Madrid Government for Employment, Economy and Competitiveness through the Instituto Regional de Seguridad y Salud en el Trabajo. And within the framework of this collaboration, Ventura project has been launched as a digital platform for the integration of occupational health and safety. And you may be wondering, did she said adventure or venture? I said Ventura. Ventura in Latin means the future, although it perfectly evokes an adventure. And this adventure is a reality. thanks to the commitment of its brilliant members that, belonging to two different worlds, have made the effort to work together from the OHS field and from the computer science field as the two heads of a hydra that, at the end of the day, belongs to the same body. This is the agenda I'm going to follow today, and I would like to start this conversation by allocating this project physically in the map of the world and spiritually in the needs of the OHS field. We all know that there are many institutions around the world devoted to the improvement of the OHS, but globally, as countries, we are all under the Vision Zero movement. Vision Zero is promoted by the International Social Security Association, and it is embraced by 320 institutions in 160 countries around the world. Vision Zero is about safety, health, and well-being for every single human as a human right. I encourage all attendees to take a look at the ISSA webpage to find their own local institutions embracing Vision Zero movement. In Spain, which is the country in the map, there are two institutions devoted to Vision Zero movement, which are Federación de Entidades Gestoras de la Administración de la Seguridad Social Española, broadly known as the Social Security in Spain, that is in charge of Vision Zero movement perspective of health, and the Instituto Nacional de Seguridad y Salud en el Trabajo, which is embracing Vision Zero movement from the perspective of the safety in the OHS. And provided that, as well as in Spain and many other countries, the competences in terms of OHS development are delegated to local regions around the countries, it is because in the region of Madrid, which is the capital of Spain, the one in the map, we have the Instituto Regional de Seguridad y Salud en el Trabajo that is embracing the perspective of safety in the OHS field in Madrid community. And this institute is the one funding this amazing project and chair. And now let me talk about the situation in the OHS field in general terms. Well, despite that it is the first objective of the European Union safety policy to improve the implementation of OHS management systems, and despite that there are standards and many technical solutions to implement them, there is a high rate of accidents in the workplace. If we take a look at the graph, we can see that there is a 2.34 million deaths per year because of accidents or occupational diseases, and this is a very high rate. That we establish the cause of that in the lack of integration of the OHS in the day-to-day reality of each and every single worker. And without this integration, Vision Zero movement is a utopian. Okay, now that we know the allocation of this project in terms of OHS, and provided that the OHS is a quite mature field in which a lot has been already done, what is going to be our approach in order to avoid inventing the wheel or overlapping with existing solutions? Well, our approach is committed with the development of digital transformation that affects people, procedures, culture, technology, and organizations, which is a quite substantial change in the OHS. Bearing in mind that digital transformation itself is a slippery concept which has many sides and that is seen in a different way for every single organization. And bearing in mind that technology already exists and the problems remain, so technology per se is not going to bring the change we are waiting for. And why am I saying this? Well, because it is a fact that digital transformation projects has a low success rate. If we take a look at the data, we can see from different sources that there is a maximum success rate of 30%, which is very low, and is affecting every single sector, included the OHS. And this is happening because there is an understanding of digital transformation as doing the things using the computers, and this is wrong. This perspective is wrong. People, culture, and procedures, leads, and technology should follow, although it is the opposite. I'm conscious about that. I'm talking about the computer scientist. I know it, but this is wrong. We shouldn't allow that this happen. So the challenge in this project is, in one side, incorporate the OHS integration in the day-to-day reality of the workers and do it through a digital transformation, avoiding the problems that we already know that digital transformation has. Fortunately, the teams of this project are experts in both fields and conscious about the problems that I already mentioned. So, to reach this goal, we decided to focus on the OHS stakeholders and be all ears to let their needs come up freely. And we did it through a value map proposition that we developed using the methodology value proposition design, so their needs, their expected benefits, their pains, the pains from the stakeholders could come up. Who are those stakeholders? Well, in this project, specifically, we work with Elecnor, representing a big company with its own OHS department, Quirón Prevención, which is the biggest OHS service provider in Spain, and the Instituto Regional de Seguridad y Salud del Trabajo, providing its expertise, background, and its experts in the field of the OHS. And from their needs, we reached several results. A shared vision about what is needed in the OHS integration we're envisioning, the products they need, and a strategy to implement them and operate. Regarding the vision, we can summarize that they are not going to accept an ideal solution that integrates the OHS in which everybody is connected and accepted for all of them, simply because they don't want it. They invested a lot of money in their own tools, so we have to respect it and do it in a way that we respect their own tools. So how is going to arrive the OHS integration we are looking for? Well, it is coming through the progressively development of a set of hyper-connected products that, respecting existing tools, can bring to the OHS stakeholders opportunities that by their own isolated cannot reach. Like, for instance, helping with the enterprise activities coordination, or facilitating the access to the information of the courses that any worker has developed along their life, so the motion from one organization to another can be easily managed, or providing apps that can help with the OHS procedures, or keeping an eye on what is going to be needed, envisioning those needs and wishes from our experts or workers or stakeholders in the OHS field, and implementing them in advance in a long cetera of 20 products. Well, with those 20 products identified, we decided to take a look in the past history of the OHS and towards the future to analyze how those current identified products were needed in the past and will be needed in the future. And what we did is to trace the 20 products identified, the current identified products, from 1 to 20 in the slide, with the literature back 10 years in the past. And we did the same with the future, using a prominent work developed by Quantic that highlights 15 trends identified by international experts. And we traced those 20 products, numbered from 1 to 20 in this slide, with the 15 trends identified by the experts. And well, one of the first observable results is that all the current identified products were needed and or will be needed in the future. Let me talk about quickly about the most mentioned ones. Well, the OHS Observatory is a product that was needed in the past and will be needed in the future. So it seems like this is a product that permanently needs to be in fashion, right? So we must keep an eye on that. Or, for instance, the permanent creation of OHS criteria. This product was not mentioned, almost a little bit mentioned in the past, but it is needed in the future because it is being very difficult to find the specific criteria to apply the current regulation today. And because the recent sanitary situation we are living with COVID-19 has demonstrated the need to fastly find common criteria to be deployed worldwide. And about the product for the standardization of the requirements for digital platforms to support the OHS, this product was mentioned in the past, and it seems it's not totally solved currently, and it will be needed in the future. So it's an indicator of, well, we have to pay attention to that. And with those parameters in mind, we had to prioritize, okay, what are we going to do during this first year of the R&D chair that I'm leading? And well, we decided to focus on the 3 products that I mentioned. The OHS Observatory in the form of an app store for the OHS field, the permanent creation of OHS criteria in the form of an app that could help experts to come up with those desired criteria, and the standardization of the requirements for the digital platforms to support the OHS in the form of Ventura model. Let me quickly talk about these 3 products. Well, regarding the standardization of requirements of the digital platforms that supports the OHS, we have developed Ventura model. Ventura model is an harmonizer of the OHS integration intended to gather all the capabilities, human and technological, that are needed to support the modern OHS integration needed from the stakeholders, as a way to allow them to assess their own tools to realize if they are really implementing those capabilities needed in the modern OHS integration or not. So this Ventura model is structured in 4 architectural elements representing the 4 main pillars in the OHS field, like for instance, the plan prevention, the risk assessment, the prevention measurements, and the preventive planning, and a set of capabilities that are supporting those architectural elements. For each capability, there are technological artifacts identified that are intended to let the companies to inspire about technologies that could help to implement those capabilities, and the actors are connected with the capabilities identified. What we are expecting from Ventura model is to become a national standard in the near future, and a little bit later in an international standard. Well, about the OHS Observatory that is implemented as an app store, it has been made a huge effort to define a technological and procedural framework that allow the systematic creation of a set of apps that are envisioning the needs and wishes of workers, experts, and the stakeholders. And my colleague, Professor Amezcua, will later talk about it a little bit in deep. And regarding the third product that I mentioned, which is the permanent creation of OHS criteria, we have been working in the development of an expert network. Of course, any attendees that want to be part of this moment can apply, and it will be great for us to receive your applications. During the session, you will have the URL where you can apply and join us. You are welcome. All of you are welcome. And also, we have been working on the application, that is the room for those experts to discuss, to come up with those criteria needed. And this app is now available in the Google Play Market and in Apple Store. It is implementing the methodology Delphi, and today we are going to have two experts in this technique that will talk about it, and my colleagues will later explain a little bit in deep this app, the Agile Delphi app, as well as the results we have obtained piloting this app within an area, specific area, the telework one, which is the one we selected because after analyzing the problems, the current problems, teleworking is a hot topic worldwide. And of course, we have organized this event that is helping us to wrap up this whole year working on the OHS integration we are envisioning to share with you all our results. And just to finish, well, Ventura project finishes its first stage and it's going to start the second one. And it's time to reflect on the work done and the work to be done according to the strategic plan that is already defined. And bearing in mind that maybe it should be or can be updated. And within these thoughts, several questions came to my mind, and I would like to share a couple of them with you. The first one is related with the modern 5.0 culture and how it fits with the OHS integration we are envisioning. 5.0 culture is about zero diseases, zero accidents, zero waste, zero unawareness, and zero inequality. Well, about zero accidents and zero diseases, it was already contemplated in Vision Zero movement, so yes, we are taking both into account in our vision. But what about zero waste? Well, this is something the modern society and the Sustainable Development Goals brought, and the OHS is not a stranger to it. So the OHS integration we are envisioning can push zero waste by providing information pills that arrives to every single worker as a mantra until it gets transformed into something natural in the daily work as part of their own culture. Well, regarding zero unawareness, in the OHS integration we are envisioning, it is essential to ensure that every single worker is aware of what is happening in the workplace environment and be able to report any substantial information they want to share with the rest of the workers. And in this way, nobody is outside the workplace environment awareness boundaries. Finally, about zero inequality. The OHS integration we are envisioning can be used as a lever to, among other things, promote gender equality by allowing women to access jobs that because of physical conditions could never reach in the past. And now my second concern is about OHS and how it is contemplated in the concept of a smart city design. And if we take a look at the existing guidelines or standards on how to design a smart city, we can find that it is not explicitly defined, and if it is not defined, how is it going to be taken into account while designing a smart city? So in order to cover this gap, current and future guidelines or standards for smart city design should define what we understand by smart OHS and how it is connected with the rest of the elements conforming the ecosystem of a smart city. And well, just to wrap up my presentation, I would like to share with you this quote from Jorge Luis Borges that I consider enlightening, which is, the future is not what is going to happen, but what we're going to do. Thank you so much.
We have received some questions for you, but as I said before, we will manage some of them after the break that we are going to have later, and the rest of them in our website. So we can continue with the presentation. We can go ahead with the presentation of Dr. Carlos Torrecilla Salinas, who will present a Delphi-based expert judgment method. Carlos is the head of the Digital Economy Unit of the Joint Research Center, in charge of providing techno-socio-economic analysis of the impact of digital transformation and emerging technologies in the European economy, society, and environment. He holds 2 master's degrees in physics and electronic engineering from the University of Granada, a master in software engineering from the University of Sevilla, and a PhD in computer science also from the University of Sevilla. He has more than 15 years of experience in the field of digital technologies, both in the private and in the public sector, and more than 8 years in the European Commission, where he has been head of sector, deputy head of unit, and head of unit in several directorates general, always linked to digital technologies. In terms of research, he has focused on the use of agile methodologies, its relation with maturity models, expert group techniques, and gamification. He is currently affiliated to the VUB in Brussels and to the University of Sevilla. Carlos, welcome to the, you can start your presentation now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Germán. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
Okay, I'll try to share my screen now and start my presentation. So just let me know if the screen is visible.
Is not yet. Yeah, it's visible now. We can see it. Thank you.
Okay, so just starting now. So, as you mentioned, Germán, I am Carlos Torrecilla, currently working on the European Commission Joint Research Center in Sevilla. I have a PhD in software engineering from the University of Sevilla, and I'm a member of 2 research groups, IWT2 in the University of Sevilla and WISE on the VUB in Brussels. Today, I will speak about the use of expert judgment techniques in order to validate software engineering proposals. But at the end of the day, the use of these techniques is valid for any field of the knowledge one can imagine. One of the problems that we face when we want to validate a proposal in any field, but in particular in the field of software engineering, is which type of approach to use. And we always come to the question of, shall we use an empirical validation or shall we use something else? The classical approach has been to use empirical validation. The use of an empirical validation implies to use a direct validation via a real-life experiment. For instance, a pilot project or a set of pilot projects. But these are not always easy to find nor organize, and in general are more costly and risky. In any case, we all know that empirical evidence is always better because it provides better insight. There is another way if we want to overcome or to face validation. It is the use of an indirect validation via the opinion of a group of experts. This is in general easier to set up and is in general less costly and with less risk. But we need to take into account that this is not replacing, it's rather complementing the empirical validation. Let's see how we can approach this validation via expert groups. The first of all is to ensure that this is a valid approach. First of all, we need to select what is the relevant technique that we will use, because there are many of them and not all of them are valid for all the problems. And then we need to apply the technique with rigor and with a scientific approach. This needs to be taken seriously because we need to prove that the validation we are undertaking is something that is valid. We should select a panel of experts composed by real experts on the field, and that should not be biased in any sense due to their knowledge or their background, etc. And then use as much as we can relevant statistical techniques to prove that the panel has reached a relevant opinion. The first thing is, of course, identify the technique to be used. And the technique should be suitable for the assumption we want to validate, and not the other way around. There are plenty of these techniques, from the classical brainstorming to nominal group techniques, Delphi method, didactic interaction. I will focus today on the Delphi method, which is the one I have been using and the one that I have particular experience. Regarding the Delphi method, as you know, we know it's an expert judgment technique in which a group of experts discuss on a selected topic, trying to reach consensus by means of questionnaires through successive rounds. The idea is that the experts don't meet physically with each other, and it's done in purpose. We prevent experts to know each other because what we want to do is avoiding group pressures through discussion. So we want each and single member of the panel to provide his and her own opinion without being biased by the prevalence of some strong opinions or some strong characters that might be present in the group. But even by having individual opinions given in anonymity, we achieve by the Delphi method a group opinion. And how do we do so? The Delphi method it's having at least 4 main characteristics. The first one is anonymity. As I explained, the experts composing the panel, they don't know each other, and they don't know who from them is expressing each one of the opinions. And this is very important because it avoids bias or the prevalence of strong characters or strong opinions. The second element, which is very interesting, is that the Delphi technique is iterative. It works on iterations. What does this mean? This means that the consensus, the opinion of the panel is built through several rounds of discussion around the same topic. And it is based on the individual feedback of each members of the panel. And this is why we say the Delphi method provides controlled feedback. Why? Because the feedback from the members of the panel is given via questionnaires, anonymous questionnaires that are processed statistically and then shared with the members of the panel. So this is why it is iterative, it's based on controlled feedback, and it provides a statistical group response. So by means of the individual opinions of the panel members, we statistically build a joint opinion of the panel. The Delphi method is based in achieving at least 2 main properties, 2 main characteristics, as explained by Dajani and others. The first one is stability. Stability means that the response of each one of the members of the panel or the response of the panel are consistent through the different rounds, meaning that even if you continue iterating on the same panel, we will not get different responses. That's stability. On the other side, we have consensus. Consensus means that the opinions of the panels converge towards a certain value. Of course, achieving consensus in a Delphi panel is an ideal situation, because we can have also situations in which there is no consensus, but there is a clear majority, or even situations in which we find two or even more opinions in the panel. And my colleague Andres later will explain how to identify those clusters. In any case, the Delphi method is built around these two concepts, stability and consensus. After each round, the first element that we need to assess in a Delphi method is stability. Basically, if the opinion of the panel is the same than it was in the previous round. If this is the case, then we examine consensus. If one of the two conditions is not met, a new round of questions should be organized by the researcher. Regarding stability, it's important that we understand that it can be measured individually, so that the opinion of each expert is consistent through the different rounds, or it can be measured also globally. So the opinion of the whole panel is consistent through rounds. In general, the opinion of the literature is that measuring stability globally is a better option. Why? Because the fact of one or two members of the panel changing a little bit or slightly their opinion might not affect the fact of a particular panel having reached an unstable situation. Regarding consensus, we can measure it via qualitative analysis and descriptive statistics, mean, median, standard deviation, or via inferential statistics, or even via a combination of both techniques. The idea is nevertheless to make sure that any of these two characteristics are measured and explained and proved, I would say, in a rigorous and scientific way. Once that we know what the Delphi method is and what are the main elements that we should take into account when speaking about Delphi method, consensus and stability, is to think on how we should design this method. A systematic approach to the Delphi method should go at least through 5 different phases: the subject selection, the selection of the panel, the first and very important first round, a series of further rounds, and then wrap up and conclusions of the panel. Starting with the subject selection, the first element is to make sure that we have a clear topic. It might happen that when a researcher is trying to approach a topic, the question to be answered is not very clear. Well, even for that, the Delphi method can help. And we can use or organize a first round based on an open questionnaire to clarify what are the main elements of a particular research topic. For instance, asking to the panel for a ranking based on the importance of those elements. Later, the questionnaire can be defined or refined to be used in further rounds. So we can even use the first round of the Delphi method for clarification and narrowing down the problem we want to solve. But it might happen that the topic that we would like the panel to discuss is clear from the outset. Then we can start the first round with a fully fledged and fully defined questionnaire. In both cases, the approaches are valid. So the Delphi method can be used as a clarification with an initial round, but it can be already used from the start with a fully fledged and defined questionnaire if the topic to be discussed is already clear. We need to make sure that the question we want to answer, or the questions we want to answer, is clear, is unambiguous, and is answerable. And these 3 elements that might seem obvious are not, because without a clear question, or without a non-ambiguous question, or even, of course, without an unanswerable question, we might not be able to progress. Once the topic is clarified, we need to create the questionnaire. As an advice, it's always good to limit the number of questions that this questionnaire includes, 15, 20, 25, because the Delphi process is a tedious process that might go through several rounds that might take even months. So the experts might participate voluntarily, So we need to make sure that this is a task they are willing to uptake. Then we need to, if possible, group the questions by categories. Why? Because by clustering the questions, it might also allow us the further processing and to make sure that even if there is no consensus at the level of the big question, some of the aspects might be partially agreed by the members of the panel. And then always request the answers in the form of a Likert scale with a textual field to provide reasoning of the given answer. And this is very important. Why? Because we will ask the panelists to say if they agree totally, partially, or not with our questions, but we might ask them why they are providing this answer. This element is critical because later on we will share with the members of the panel an anonymized version of this feedback. And each one of the panelists, on the light of the anonymized feedback of all their fellow panelists, might reassess and reconsider their opinion or not. So that is the way we build the questionnaire. It's important that together with the definition of the questionnaire, we also define the statistical processing we are going to use for the later evaluation of the answers. We might combine, as I said, qualitative assessment of the written answers that each one of the panelists is giving us. And it's important that we read them all and try to interpret them, but also descriptive statistics, mean, median, standard deviation. This is a basic analysis that will already give us a smell on the situation of the panel. But we can include some other techniques that might be very useful. From the Cronbach's alpha, which is a statistic that allows us to measure how well a particular instrument adapts to the question we want to ask. So the idea here is that if the value of the Cronbach's alpha is high, our questionnaire will be good for the question we try to answer. To a collection of statistics like Cohen's kappa, Fleisch's kappa, and Kendall's W that are used to measure agreement between raters based on different conditions. For instance, Cohen's kappa measures the agreement between two raters, and Fleisch and kappa and Kendall's W measure the agreement between n raters, to the use of the simple concordance analysis, which is a graphic technique that allows to measure the dispersion or not of answers and experts. The best is to use a combination of all of them based on the particular problem we want to solve. And it's important that we test the usefulness of these statistics and other techniques before we start the process, to make sure that once we have started, everything is going to work. So we select the question, we define the questionnaire, and we define the techniques we are going to use in order to validate such questionnaire. Then we move to the second phase, which is as crucial as the first, and in general happens in parallel. So these two happens in parallel, which is the selection of the panel. The selection of the panel is key because there is where we have the credibility of our process. We need to select it very carefully and make sure there is no bias. We need to prove objectively that the members of the panel are experts on the topics we are discussing. So they might be experts on something else, but that is not relevant. We need to be able to prove that they are expert on the subject we are discussing. We need to also ensure that the panel is well balanced with geographical diversity, gender diversity, experience diversity with different backgrounds, profiles, work experience. Based on literature, I have found that minimum we might need to have 15 active participants, but better if there are 20. With this, we might consider that our panel opinion is relevant. Of course, as I said at the beginning, the use of expert judgment techniques do not exclude that we might need to do an empirical validation later on. At the end of the day, what the Delphi method presents is the opinion of a certain group of experts, which is not the absolute truth. Once we have the two critical phases finished, the subject selection and the panel selection, then we move to the preparation of the first round, which is very important. First of all, we need to prepare as much as we can background material to the panelists, so they understand the question or the questions we are posing upfront. For instance, by means of video tutorials or other online materials. Then we also need to think that we need to ease as much as we can the further processing of the data we are going to gather. So the development of an online form or any other tool that will automate the gathering of the data, and the further processing by means of R or any other statistical programming language is good. It's also important that we time box the duration of the round and that the panelists know this upfront. Send periodical reminders in order to have their feedback. Typically, based on my experience, around might last between 3 and 4 weeks. That's the time it takes for the panelists to go through the material, understand the question, go through the questionnaire, and provide meaningful feedback. Once the first round has finalized, is the moment to process the data. And as mentioned, we should use the statistical techniques we have defined to process this data. Combination of descriptive statistics, but also and inference statistics, but also analyzing qualitative the written replies to understand the rationale of the answer. In most of the cases, we might find also relevant information regarding how clear or not is the questionnaire, how relevant are the options to answer the questionnaire, etc. With all the information we have analyzed, we prepare a blind report. The blind report is to be distributed to each and single member of the panel before the beginning of the next round. We might combine our descriptive statistics per question with the anonymous written explanation of each panelist, as I explained just before. And of course, as mentioned, we need to assess if there is consensus before moving on. It's the first round, so we cannot assess stability because we don't know what was the situation before. We might have received feedback to adjust the questionnaire to make it clearer. We can do that if needed, and then move to further rounds. The process will repeat as explained for the first round, in which we distribute the blind report among panelists. We ask them to reassess the answers on the light of the results of the previous round. They might see that the general opinion goes in one direction and they have a different one. They might want to reconsider or to stick to their opinion and further justify it. And again, make sure that each round is time boxed properly, so the process can move on and it does not get stuck. Again, at the end of the report, we process the feedback and prepare a new blind report, assessing consensus and stability. At the moment we achieve both, we conclude the exercise. If not, we launch a new round. As mentioned, and with regard to consensus, it is also possible that we reach other final situations, majority, bipolarity, or clusters. This is for the researcher running the exercise to decide if the process can go on, looking for, I would say, a future consensus, or if the situation is unchangeable and therefore should be terminate, the process should terminate. And finally, to conclude the Delphi process, we document the results of the exercise in the form of a report, identifying the final conclusions of the panel in relation to the initial assumption. And this is very important because we are not looking for the absolute truth. Here, what we want to provide is the opinion, the groupal opinion of a certain number of experts in the field we are assessing. And we might have consensus agreeing on what we propose, not agreeing, majority. Whatever result that brings needs to be documented and justified. We should detail the process, indicating how it was conducted. Template, form, replies, all the material should be carefully kept and provided. And also we indicate how we have measured all the steps of our process, how consensus and stability were objectively measured in each one of the steps. It's important that we take upfront the limitations of this exercise that does not replace but rather complements any empirical validation. and propose any further validation or clarification that might be complementary to the results we have obtained. With that, we can have a strong way to validate a particular proposal that might not imply a costly and lengthy real empirical experiment. We can have an example as the one that was conducted for the validation of my PhD proposal. That was a proposal for an agile approach on web environments that could allow the achievement of the different maturity levels of CMMI, a framework, a maturity model for software engineering. We defined a questionnaire with 21 statements in 4 sections that were measuring agility, CMMI, web, and the overall consistency of the framework. And we were asking the experts to show their agreement by means of a 5-level Likert scale, in which they were saying if they totally agreed or totally disagreed with the proposed statement. We developed a form to get their replies, and we defined a panel with 20 experts from 8 different countries with at least 5 years of experience in Agile, 8 in CMMI, and 10 in web, and with profiles ranging from private, public sector, university, and colleagues, and being researchers, team leaders, project managers, senior managers. So, as mentioned, a bit of variety to make sure there was no evident bias in the panel. We use descriptive analysis by means of mean, median, standard deviation. We did a textual review of the expert comments, and we checked the homogeneity and concordance by means of the Cronbach alpha, by means of the simple concordant analysis that I will explain later, and the use of Kendall's W. You can see that the first round took place in 2016, and it lasted for almost a month. And here you can see some of the results. We present the evaluation of each one of the questions by means of a box and whiskers graph, in which we show the mean of the replies, the interquartile distance, and any statistical outlier. But we also presented the data with different other ways, by measuring the way of the agreement versus the disagreement, like in the chart I'm presenting in the top right corner. And in the bottom left corner, you can see an example of the simple concordance analysis. As I mentioned, this is a way to measure the distance between members of a particular sample. And here you can see the distance between the experts and the question. So you can see here that there is a majority of experts that were grouping themselves, and there was a majority of questions that were grouping themselves. By analyzing this graphically, so experts are behaving the same and are providing more or less the same reply to the question, with some outliers, as you can see here, Q4, Q14, or Q8. One can assume that experts are behaving the same and are answering the same way the questions. You have here examples from the second and the third round, in which the data was progressing, and the final results of the reports through rounds, in which one can see how consensus could be built, and also around the proposal that we were making. We can also analyze, as I said, using descriptive statistics, the agreement, and finally, in this particular case, we obtained strong agreement on the statements we were proposing to the panel. Here you can see the reference of all of this exercise that we published in the Journal Information Technology and Management, a GCR indexed journal. And that's all from my side. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any question, I'm open to take them.
For your presentation, Carlos. And thank you to those attendants who have asked some questions. I have to say that some of you had trouble typing questions using the YouTube streaming link. And the reason is that you are not logged in. So we have received some questions by email. So we will have time to answer these questions in the discussion session after the break. and we can then go to the next presentation we have for today. Thank you, Carlos. We can continue with Dr. Andres Leonardo Martinez Ortiz. Andres has a wide experience in R&D at the telecommunications and software engineering sectors. He has been always working, developing, transferring, and promoting innovative technologies. Also, he has been a founder in a couple of non-fully successful startups. Starting in April 2013, he is glad to be part of the developer relations team at Google. From an educational point of view, he has completed a PhD in computer science. Nonetheless, he has been keeping an eye on continuous education with additional training courses on project management, ITIL, or entrepreneurship. Particularly, he is extending his skills on business and management, attending a part-time bachelor in business administration. From a career point of view, he has been working on most of the stages of R&D and innovation, including software development, project management, product definition, marketing and business development at several R&D departments of telecommunications and software engineering industries. He also spent some time as associate professor in a computer science school, teaching distributed operating systems, embedded systems, robotics, and programming. During all this time, he has been focusing on open innovation strategies and planning and deployment of innovation projects deeply related with open source paradigms and technologies, where developers, communities, and third parties played an important role. In particular, for the last few years, he has been designing strategies aiming university students and small and medium enterprises to engage developers on new technologies. Geographically, as part of his activities, he has been creating partnerships with enterprises, big industrial associations, developers, communities, and universities in Spain, Argentina, Colombia, Brazil, Mexico, and Chile, but also Canada, USA, Europe, and Israel. Welcome, Andres, and now you have the word. Thank you.
Welcome, and thank you for attending this presentation. I would like to thank also to the organizer for having me. My name is Andres Leonardo Martinez, and today I'm going to present a method to categorize a group of people participating in Delphi analysis. This is a new approach that I got researching how software quality is defined for open source communities. Let's start with the so the title of the presentation is Kendall Clustering Analysis, and there is a subtitle connected with a classical paper where Kendall coefficient was used to categorize species of animals in a similar approach that we are following here, and was the inspiration for this particular analysis. Today we will talk first about the context of this research. This is part of the bigger study, as I mentioned. I will provide more details later, and I will also introduce how the modification of the Kendall coefficient was used in my particular approach for Delphi method. After that, I will present in a more formal way the Kendall clustering analysis, reviewing how Kendall coefficients is used in Delphi analysis to top the round of interviews. And then I will go for presenting, explaining the proper Kendall clustering analysis, which is the topic of this presentation. After that, I will show the result of the investigation, how this new method was providing value for my concrete study. And I will show the different consensus distribution. I will present how using dynamic analysis of the Kendall distribution provide also interesting insight. And finally, I will go deeper into the cluster analysis. Last part of the presentation will be some conclusion about the research and how this could be expanded for the future, with also some additional references. Okay, let's start with the context of this research. Let me say something about that. In the last years, I have been working with the open source communities, developers communities working around a common goal, producing high quality software. This is a well-known situation, I would say, but actually in the industry, there are still of companies which actually don't know pretty well how they can use these approaches, technologies, or methodologies to produce high quality software. So, in one hand, you have a very fast and high quality ecosystem producing, in some cases, high standard solution and implementation of trendy technologies. In the other side, you have a community of developer which actually are difficult to understand for people that are not involved in their activities. So with all of this situation, my personal motivation was, if we are able to connect, if we are able to present how these communities are producing technology, how they are using high standard quality for producing software, probably we will be able to influence in a positive way the industry, making them more innovative and increasing their productivity. So with this framework, with this personal motivation, I went for this concrete research that you can see here represented with different elements. So in one hand, again, there was a high standard software produced with high quality in this open ecosystem. But at the same time, it was a lack of credibility or understanding in US. So the idea was to, in particular, focusing on quality. The idea was to connect these software quality models with the standard that the industry use for these elements. So I put the focus on a very concrete open ecosystem. In particular, I was focusing on web component ecosystem. Most of these technologies are produced in open source communities, and for me, were really interesting because web is one of the faster ecosystem in terms of innovation. In the last 30 years, we saw plenty of new services, new interaction model, and all this was built on top of very trendy technology. In many cases, those technologies were produced by, let's say, developers, in some cases without formal training. So it was a pure ecosystem where people were introducing new technologies and learning from there and producing almost from scratch. But at the same time, web is also well known because the lack of quality, security, and in some cases you can see very concerning situation related to web technology. So focusing on web component, I thought that could be a way to, first of all, highlight how web ecosystem were introducing software engineering elements, because web components is a way to create modules, components of technology, connecting logic, rendering, and also implementation details of technology that you can reuse easily. So it's one of the latest attempts of the web ecosystem for introducing software engineering practices. So the research, which is it was called Analysis and Characterization of Quality Model of Open Source Web Components, was trying to connect those ecosystem, the way that they were producing technologies, with the a very concrete standard of the industry, the ISO 25000. The series of standard ISO 25000, also known as a SQUARE, stand by system and software quality requirement and evaluation, has the goal of creating framework for evaluating software product quality, and is the standard that the industry is using to deal with software quality. Not only product quality, but also quality in use. So yeah, having this high goal in mind, the research question were connecting with this broad situation, this broad scope of the initial thought. So first of all, I was wondering myself if there is a proper methodology to analyze, to research software quality produced in the open source repositories. So that was quite a methodological question, or question about methodology, but it makes sense because, as you will see in a second, there are important requirements connecting with all of this. After that, the next question was, do web components have a quality models? Do the developers producing those web components have quality in mind? And if that is true, which are the characteristics that they are using? Next step is, okay, if web component have a quality model and developer use a concrete set of characteristics, are those covering the quality characteristics that the ISO 25000 include or cover? So are any way able to cover or inform or represent the quality that the standard consider and defines? And finally, are these characteristics evaluable in an automatic way? So all of these questions are connecting and represented in a figure that you can see here. We start from open source quality models, and then doing qualitative analysis, we start interviewing with an open interview process, expert coming from those open ecosystem, trying to understand which are the elements of this quality model. Once we have these characteristics, we propose a more structured approach. Actually, it's a Delphi analysis of the coverage of this empirical quality model. Characteristics are covering the standard, the characteristics defined by the standard. This is the next step where we basically did, again, an analysis of following the Delphi method. And there is where we are going to fit this Kendall cluster analysis. Continuing with the research, we basically identify a set of metrics covering the characteristics defined by the standard, and then we produce an evaluation, experimental evaluation platform, allowing us to present how these metrics could affect the quality perceived by the user. So we were introducing synthetic metrics. We were modifying web component in a synthetic way to present this to user and basically evaluate if this metric were after all affecting the quality perceived by the user. The idea is to introduce a full path of coverage, starting from the qualitative analysis to the very end validation by final user. If you analyze this situation carefully, you realize that there are several important restrictions. We have to analyze data from different sources. We have experts from different background, but at the same time, we need to understand how this consideration, the information that we get from the expert, are properly covering the standard defined characteristic, and how these elements, how these metrics allow us to evaluate equality by final user. At the same time, we need to explore findings. We need to basically generalize the findings that we got from the expert in a broader way in order to connect with the different elements. Finally, there are experimental design that need to be expanded. So we were creating a few experiments, but actually we need to generalize. So connecting with all of that, we realized that the conventional approach for research wasn't enough, and we decided to go for a mixed method research, basically collecting and analyzing both quantitative and qualitative data, integrating, combining, mixing the two formats of data and the result, and finally organizing all of this procedure into specific research design, providing the logic of the procedures conducting the study. We were following an exploratory sequential design just to connect the different elements of the qualitative analysis and trying to come up with the experimental design. Okay, so move to the next topics. As I mentioned, we were using Delphi analysis in order to understand if the qualitative quality characteristics were covering the attribute defined by the standard ISO 25000. So Delphi analysis is a structured communication technique or method, and it was originally developed as a systematic interactive forecasting method for different topics, relying on a panel of experts. So what we do is to present a series of questions in a recurrent process to a panel of experts, and we are introducing some modification, presenting the information of the group as a whole in order to validate if the expert were sure of their opinion or was influenced from different aspects, till the point that we find a kind of a stable consensus among the experts. So in this particular research, we were using variation of Delphi analysis because we have a high number of questions, 45, and the complexity of the question were so high that we need to facilitate the interview. So what we did was to have in-person interviews where a facilitator were presenting the question and recording all of this conversation to analyze. Despite this modification, we still were using surveys. We still were using questionnaires. So at the end, we have a very structured way to analyze the information following the conventional, let's say, Delphi analysis. So in particular, what we did was to create a panel of experts. We were coding the different experts using letter E, standing for expert, then 2 digits to cover the 20 expert from 00 to 19. And finally, we also use a third digit to identify the level of expertise. This value was auto-assigned by the expert themselves. We also use different attributes to create a taxonomy of the expert, relying on expertise, considering, for instance, years of experience and education or technical background, where we were considering which was the sector of the industry where those experts were working for, or if they were contributing to open source project. We were obviously interested in what was the, let's say, approach or the companies for software quality analysis. In particular, we were asking them if they were QA team or people working only on QA in their industry, in their companies. And finally, they were doing a static analysis of QA or dynamic analysis of QA. The final, let's say, question were about which were the technology that they were using for web components and if they were using linters. So with this panel, we run the sequence of Delphi analysis using the standard, let's say, statistics to decide how good was the, let's say, the process. So we use the Cronbach alpha, which is a reliability coefficient measuring if we were able to produce similar result under consistent situation. So this is a way to be sure that we are not introducing bias or there is anything affecting the process itself. And it's important to check this element to be sure that there is no, let's say, unknown element or unknown effect perturbing the Delphi analysis. These coefficients might have a value between 0, which is bad, and to 1, which is the best. And we use this in every single sequence just to be sure, again, we are not introducing any bias in the process. In addition to this, we were also using correspondent analysis, which is an exploratory and visual techniques, allowing us to do kind of visual principal component analysis, but for categorical data, which is the case. The final part, which is important here, is the Kendall coefficient, which is a way to identify what is the level of agreement on the opinion of several experts on several questions. So it's a non-parametric statistic. And again, it ranges from 0 to 1. 0, no agreement. 1 is complete agreement. Interestingly, Kendall coefficients don't do any assumption regarding the distribution of the information. So it's a non-parametric statistics. So the final result of the Delphi analysis, as you can see here, we got a Cronbach alpha close to 0.9, which is good. And in order to decide it was enough with 2 rounds of interviews, we used the Kendall coefficients evaluating the stability of the opinions. But also, and this is the first step for our modification, we also introduced the intra-Kendall coefficients. So we will go into details later, but as you can see here, we were evaluating the empirical attributed quality that we identify with these 3 internal and 3 external metrics. We're covering the attribute of quality defined by the standard ISO 25000. So as you can see here, external metric were able to cover properly quality in use. The coverage of the product quality is not so good, but still very interestingly. Again, the opinion of the expert about this result is moderately strong. We will go deeper on that later. That means that, well, people, the expert participating in the panel are kind of okay with this empirical model that we build for quality of the web components. Let's move to the next section. In this section, we are going to define in a more formal way how we were using Kendall coefficients to create a categorization process for expert of the panel. So let me rephrase here how Kendall coefficient is used in standard way for Delphi analysis. So you have the formal definition of the Kendall coefficients for P expert. In our case, P was 20, n question. In our case, n was 45, and t is a correction factor for tiles. And again, keep in mind the final result of this statistic in the second round. So what you have here is the conventional approach for Kendall analysis. So we have several rounds of interviews where every single expert produces a bunch of answers for the n question. And in order to decide if we reach a stable situation, we go for a kind of trick. So we evaluate, we introduce, let's say, expert identifying the average opinion. So we average all of the answers per each round, and then we calculate the Kendall coefficient for this average expert. So if the average expert of the round n is has similar opinion as the average expert of the round n minus 1, we consider that this should finish. The Delphi analysis should stop here, because the opinion of the expert are not going to change that much if we do the process one more round. Obviously, we balance all of this with the Cronbach alpha and the correspondent analysis, just to be sure that the information is consistent. But this is the way that we used to basically expand the analysis of the rounds of the Delphi analysis using Kendall coefficient. So again, this is the standard approach. And then this is what we did. As I mentioned, in the last round of the Delphi analysis, we got an Kendall coefficients among the expert participating in the round, so among the 20 expert, close to 0.6. So we are using here the scale that you can see below. So the range of the Kendall coefficients go from 0 to 1. 1 is the maximum consensus. 0 is the no consensus at all. And then we introduce different ranges. So from 0 to 0.4, this is weak consensus. From 0.7 to 1 is strong consensus. And in the middle, we have kind of moderate weak and moderate strong. So as you can see here, what we got was a moderate strong consensus on the coverage of the empirical attribute of quality of the standard quality attribute. The question is, okay, this group of experts agree moderately strong, but what about the smaller cluster of experts? Are they a smaller group of experts agree more? So can we get an idea of different taxonomies of experts, basically analyzing what is the level of agreement among the experts? And the answer is we think that there is a way. So what we did was to evaluate all the distribution of the Kendall coefficients for the different level of cluster. So starting from 2, we were selecting cluster of 2 experts among the 20, and we were evaluating the Kendall coefficient and trying to understand what was a level of consensus among cluster of 2 experts. And we do the same for 3, 4, and the different possibilities or combination of 20 experts, calculating different values. So the maximum level of agreement, the minimum level of agreement, and then a couple of simple statistic like the mean value and the standard deviation value. So that was the proposal, and let me show you one example of what we got. In particular, what we got here is an example of the analysis of the distribution, Kendall distribution for a cluster of 4 experts. In particular, there are close to 5,000 clusters of different experts, and we were analyzing the Kendall coefficient for those. So after reviewing all the possibilities, we got that the cluster of the expert formed by expert number 7, number 10, number 13, and 17 was 0.83. The minimum value was the cluster of the expert 3, 5, 8, and 19, and the agreement was 0.43. Mean value was 0.77, and the standard deviation was 0.07. So as you can see here, there is no overlap between the expert, the cluster. So yeah, this is important, and we will discuss more about that. So for this particular side, we got also the histogram, and we also ran the Shapiro-Wilk normality test. So as you can see here, the distribution looked like a normal one. So that was going to be the standard situation for all of the distribution. Okay, so let's move to analysis of the result. Again, in this section, I'm going to present how, in my particular case, I was analyzing the information coming from the Delphi analysis with this new approach using Kendall coefficient. So, some consideration from the computational point of view. So you can see here the combination of 20 elements when you take n of them. It might be a big number. It's not huge. And actually, I was using a desktop computer to calculate all of the distribution. But in total, for my 20 expert, it was close to 1 million calculation of the Kendall coefficient. So it's not a big deal. It took 1 hour and a half, something like that, using again a desktop computer. I was using R. So there are different ways to optimize, but I think it's interesting to keep this in mind, because for situation where the panel of expert is bigger, it could be a problem, it could be an issue. In Delphi, we don't used to use more than 20-30 experts, so no big deal. But if we want to generalize this approach for different application, maybe we need to introduce some optimization instead of algorithm or sampling in order to reduce the number of computation. So yeah, you can see here the distribution of the data for the different cluster. So the most important thing here is that almost all of them seems to be normal, and you have some negative skewedness for the size of the cluster smaller than n divided by 2. So when we are talking about a cluster smaller than 10, they seems to have negative skewedness. For cluster with a size bigger than 10, they seems to have positive skewedness. So yeah, the next thing is I was using an analysis of the evolution of the different values, trying to understand if there were situation where there might be some clear differences between the cluster. In this particular case, this seems to be quite, let's say, normal. But in any case, we see that the minimum value of the agreement was evolving from a maximum with the smaller cluster, and then they go descending to a global minimum for the cluster of 4 experts, and then from that they was growing to the different set of cluster in an ascending way. For the maximum, as you can imagine, the maximum agreement is for the smaller cluster, so it's easier to agree between two persons that when you have cluster with a bigger number of experts. But again, it was evolving from close to 0.9 to a little bit below 0.6. That was the final value. In addition, I was also analyzing the mean and the standard deviation. So the mean was, let's say, moderate, strong, and strong. So starting from the smaller cluster to the biggest one. And it's very interesting to see that the standard deviation is really, really low. So there is a, let's say, quite a strong opinion between the different cluster for the different distribution. Okay, so with that, we create a table and we represent it in a tabular way in order to see which were the expert belonging to the cluster with the maximum and with the minimum agreement. And we were doing this for all of the distribution. So it's quite a graphical way to represent. And in our particular case, we were looking for the biggest cluster with the maximum agreement. So in addition, we also consider not overlapping cluster. So for instance, you can see here that the cluster distribution of the 6 expert, which has close to 39,000 different cluster, we got the biggest cluster with the maximum agreement for non-overlapping expert. That means that this particular cluster formed by the expert 1, 5, 12, 14, 16, and 17, we got a strong agreement. So a Kendall coefficient of 0.786. At the same time, another interesting, in our case, cluster was formed by the cluster of 10 expert. In this case, we have close to 190,000 cluster for this distribution, and this is the biggest cluster for strong agreement with overlapping expert. So we stick to the strong agreement, which was important for us, and we consider overlapping and non-overlapping cluster. The importance of overlapping is basically we want to be sure that we consider taxonomies where the expert belong to just one category. So we were interested in differentiate those situations because it might be important for us. So the next slide present the rest of the distribution and the analysis. You can see here different configuration, and according your own interest, it might be interesting to consider bigger clusters with this additional representation. In our particular case, we won't go deeper on that because it wasn't interesting for us to analyze other things that a strong agreement of the cluster. Okay, so once we had a different cluster, the idea was to compare this information with the taxonomy that we introduced at the beginning. If you remember, we were talking about expertise, we were talking about professional background, we were also analyzing the analysis of quality in their industry and different technologies. So you can see here how we analyze those cluster, obtaining let's say a snapshot of how this expert look like when we compare according to the taxonomy that we introduced. You see clearly that there are some differences, but obviously this require further analysis in order to understand what are the implication of these differences. The important thing is that we were able to basically obtain a connection between the level of agreement and the taxonomy. And that is critical because in particular of quality, there are many considerations according the background of the expert. You may be a developer, for instance, you might be an integrator, or maybe a final user. So your consideration could be interesting. So again, probably in the other situation, we can go deeper and connect with the more concrete elements of the taxonomy, or what is more important, we could reverse the process, and once we find the different cluster, trying to understand which are the differences, where are those experts agree the most, or why are those experts agreeing the less, and trying to see here if we need to consider different definition of quality with different approach for evaluating it, or something like that. So this is almost everything. Going really quick to finish this presentation. The conclusion of this research is that intra-round of application of Kendall coefficients provide insight connecting the taxonomy of the expert with the level of agreement. And that is important in order to understand if that taxonomy provide information, or we need to find some additional details. The Kendall distribution and dynamic analysis of Kendall coefficients is effective analyzing the taxonomy. And this is was pretty clear for us. And it's a way to expand the Delphi analysis, which is the final consideration here. Regarding future research, obviously we need to expand our studies, and probably the first should be a proper qualitative analysis of the cluster and taxonomy definition. Is this reverse process where we go back from the cluster that we obtain and trying to find where are the reason of these differences. At the same time, we can introduce some dynamic changes in the questionnaire of Delphi analysis using information from cluster. Right now, Delphi analysis basically modify the question between rounds using feedback provided by the expert, is concrete feedback, but the Kendall cluster analysis could be an automatic way to identify that there's something that's not working properly and we need to modify the questionnaire. And finally, the improvement of the algorithm and the sampling approach for calculation, the computational aspect of this analysis is important, and it might be a way to expand the application to a broader audiences. Finally, I have here a few more links to the researches that I did in the past, so you can find additional information about all of this research, and also the code of the implementation of the analysis. It can be found in GitHub. So this is all from my side. Thank you all for attending this call, and yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Andres, for this wonderful presentation on Kendall cluster analysis. We will collect some of the questions we have for you, and we will manage them on our website and later on our discussion session. Thank you very much. Now it is time to have a short break. We will be back in 15 minutes. So please, for those connected online, we will be back. After the break, we will see the Agile Delphi app, and we will have a short session for discussion. Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, hello attendees. Thank you very much for this great opportunity. It's such a pleasure to be here today with you, sharing our results about Agile Delphi application, and also, well, about the results after validating it. Today's agenda will start with something that Dr. Carlos already said, is about traditional Delphi methodology. We will cover this part briefly, just in order to do a small recap, and the inherent problems of the methodology. Then we will continue with the Agile Delphi app, what are the motivations and goals, what we want to achieve by developing this, extended or enhanced methodology, and also about the app that will be the next step in this presentation. We will continue with the validation case that we conducted in order to check whether the application was proper or not. And we will show the results that we obtained after executing a case proposed by Dr. Fuensanta Medina, one important part in our team. Finally, we will conclude with the usage demo, mainly conducted by my partner and friend, Andre Garcia, and the future work that we have identified and that we plan to implement in a near future. So, as all of you probably already know, the Delphi methodology emerged by Rand Corporation during the 40s, and basically the idea is to get a set of objective criteria based on the consensus of experts in any kind of matter, right? So the idea behind the methodology is to have two kinds of let's say users from the perspective of an app. On the one hand, we have the moderators or coordinators of this process, and on the other hand, we have the experts, that are the anonymous people that participate in the process in order to provide the feedback. So after a set of rounds, arbitrary set of rounds, initially 2 or 3, but it can vary, the idea is to get a consensus among them, and from that consensus prepare the set of criteria and conclusions, right? Well, this process, this methodology, has a set of inherent problems. Due to that, that methodology is based on communication, because the coordinators or moderators need to deliver broadcast not just the question forms and also the results to the experts. Most of the problems comes from the communication perspective, right? You need to inform the experts, you need to contact the experts, check for their availability, and send them the results after every round, aggregate and collect their responses, evaluate all the different responses in order to check with different metrics if there are consensus or not, etc. Okay, and all these interactions are subject to delays. With Agile Delphi, what we wanted to achieve is an evolution of the traditional Delphi methodology. How? Well, in general terms, the idea behind Agile Delphi is to evolve the typical Delphi methodology to make it faster, right? So the purpose, the objective, is to generate an app. Nowadays, apps are quite common and useful things that you can use in your mobile phones, in your tablets, computers, etc. In this case, to guide interactions among experts towards the unification of criteria. This is the typical Delphi, but with enhanced communication and with enhanced procedures, faster procedures. In this case, the application was developed considering the occupational health and safety, right? So the processes that can be conducted are adapted towards OHS. But potentially the application could be used in any kind of field where you require some criteria or some kind of conclusions, right? So what we wanted with Agile Delphi is to speed up the traditional Delphi process, reducing times to get the results from the experts, the analysis of results, to minimize the communications problems among the experts and the coordinators or moderators of the process, to reduce the time required in order to analyze the data, because it can be delegated in the machines and artificial intelligence algorithms, etc. To provide a truly anonymous environment regulated by the backend, by the system itself, and to ease the selection and invitation of experts with different backgrounds, because you can do it automatically, taking leverage of the novel artificial intelligence algorithms and recommender systems. So, which were the steps taken in order to end into Agile Delphi? Not just the app, but also the methodology. Well, the first step was to identify the pros and the cons of the typical traditional Delphi methodology. The second step was to maximize the advantages and try to minimize the disadvantages by solving them, if possible, right? In some cases, we just mitigated some problems. In other cases, we killed the problem themselves. And finally, after having this set of information already collected, the last step was to determine whether existing techniques or tools, mostly from information technologies, are able to tackle Delphi problems, the traditional Delphi problems, and or if they can enhance the identified benefits. In the preliminary analysis, we identified the following pros and nice characteristics from Delphi. The methodology, obviously, is quite flexible. You can find a diversity of opinions because you can count with experts with multiple backgrounds. All the experts should be anonymous in order to avoid bias, as it has been said before. And also it must be voluntary, okay, in order to create a nice environment. No pressure, not stress, so the experts should participate in a voluntary mean. The type of environment derived from a Delphi process is creativity favorable, right? It's not like a brainstorming, but at least you can get a lot of different interesting outcomes. Given that the experts have different backgrounds or can have different backgrounds, you can end up with a nice set of opinions after the rounds. A big interesting pro is that the achieved consensus has a high level of confidence because it comes from rigorous experts in the matter. It also, creates an atmosphere where there is equity. All the experts have the same chance of participation, and it avoids the protagonism of one or more experts over the others, given that all of them are anonymous. It also avoids the creation of bias. It also ensures the freedom of opinions, given that at the end you cannot know which expert was the one that provided a specific opinion, right? So anyone can say whatever he or she wants. And the outcome, the criteria you can generate from the Delphi process in general has a high objectivity level. Okay, it's a good criteria. You can get a nice set of criteria. As cons, when the results depend, as this is obvious, on the communication of many actors, then the process can take more time than expected. This is something we just talked about, all the delays that may emerge from the different parts of the process. Also, in order to do a nice agile Delphi or Delphi traditional process, you need experts in the matter, and you need good experts in the matter. And if you have experts with different backgrounds in the matter, is even better, because you can get a more diversity of opinions. Also, the experts should be available. Okay, if their agendas are very tight and they don't have time to participate, it's worthless. It requires, a Delphi process requires a fast and versatile communication channel or channels. The slower or less versatile channels, the more time or delays could be created, right? So you need something fast that allows you to send a variety of information. Also, to prepare good question forms is vital. If you have a good question form, usually the conclusions will be good. On the other hand, if you have a bad question form, yeah, you may get some subjective criteria, for instance, or you may need to take like a higher number of rounds in order to finish the Delphi process, and it also again creates delays. So it's not good. And finally, I would say it's expensive. A traditional Delphi process, given that you need to communicate a lot of experts, to do a lot of paperwork, collect and aggregate a lot of information, compute statistics in order to check if there is consensus or not. It's very expensive in terms of resources and time, right? So, yeah. So, after evaluating the pros and the cons, which were the approaches we considered? Well, we thought, okay, we are somehow experts in IT. We are quite confident by using novel technologies like artificial intelligence techniques, cloud computing, mobile app development, etc. So why don't we create a tool, an app in this case, multi-platform, in order to reach the maximum number of people, experts, coordinators, etc. In order to support all the actors involved in the traditional Delphi methodologies in all the phases of such methodology. Okay, so let's create a multi-platform app to provide the different actions and steps belonging to Delphi methodology. Well, that was the first approach. The second one was, okay, we are somehow experts in agile techniques, agile in terms of software engineering, right? So let's adapt the principles of agile into Delphi. Okay, adapted principles, right? For instance, we can consider the rounds as the sprints. A sprint in agile methodology consists in a specific amount of time that you employ in creating a small part of the final product. Okay, independent, a small part of the final product. In that process, you define which are the objectives. At the end, you evaluate if the objective was achieved or not. In this case, you can see that adapting a sprint as a round is somehow direct, right? So we did this kind of adaptation, among others. And finally, another of the main approaches we decided was to make use of advanced information technologies related tools. For instance, artificial intelligence, in order to simplify the processes. Imagine if you need to count on a set of experts for a specific, very specific process. By means of these artificial intelligence techniques, you can create a recommender system that, based on the expertise CV of the people you have in the app, registered users as experts, you can automatically get which are the best experts for that specific process, given their expertise, given their level of interaction with the app. So yeah, it's possible to perform this kind of operations. and it saves a lot of time as an ultimate time saver. Also, you can use these artificial intelligence techniques in order to identify whether there's a consensus or not by applying the typical statistical operations automatically on the outcome of these question forms, or even to generate nice statistics and graphs. In this case, not just by using artificial intelligence, but conventional algorithms from computer science.
So on the architecture and app system, wait, I don't see myself. Now, okay, well then, as we thought about it must be a mobile app, we started to use Xamarin from Microsoft as the first technology, so we could manage to get the iOS and Android app as soon as possible. On the other hand, of having Swift and Java for managing that both applications. So after some development process, we deduced that we didn't need Xamarin because it was so slow process to generate the app. So we swapped to Ionic, which is actually the application you're currently seeing on the screen. And on the other hand, on the backend, as the technology from the servers, let's say, we use Spring Boot since the beginning for handling every request, so we can just scale the application for, let's say, millions of users at a glance with no more efforts from us at the development level. To handle that, we used Google Cloud Platform to manage the connections, the database, and the environment of the application. So as we can see on the, those are us just playing with the application, managing it, and developing it all nights. We can see the environments we use for programming.
At the very beginning, we spent a lot of evenings, a lot of afternoons, coding hard in cozy environments, as we can see on the left image. But as usual, you can see we had some errors, mostly related to Xamarin, as Andrei said. That's why we decided to migrate into a more novel, I would say, and widespread framework as Ionic. We spent long nights, and after
we had two experts on the material.
and quality analysis, evolution of the process of implementation, etc., and we succeed. It's obviously we end up running with the proper solution and with a functional minimum viable product. We end up with the application that is the one we tested and validated.
But it's actually a minimum viable product that can scale at a glance without having any troubles on the back end or shorthand, because we managed to make it as soon as possible, but without putting walls on our software for the future.
That's it. In any case, not all the development process was stressful and tiring, We also had several milestones that we celebrate with the fantastic team we are working in. So you can see some pictures of the celebrations when we end up running the application and when we had the validation done, etc.
Yeah, that's a fancy part of the development process.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the best part. So after having the application running, this minimum viable product with a minimum set of features, we started the validation of the app. In this case, the topic selected by Dr. Fuensanta Medina was obtaining rigorous criteria for the safe implementation of teleworking. That is a quite relevant topic nowadays, even more after the COVID-19 pandemic, worldwide pandemic. For the validation, we counted with 3 coordinators from IRSST, Regional Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, and from our side, from Carlos Tercero, a couple of coordinators, sorry. In the case of experts, we counted with 17 experts from important companies, both national and international, and they were extremely helpful. And they provided a lot of feedback, not just about the process itself, but also about some problems and issues that were identified in the app. And in order to conduct the Delphi process, in this case, agilized or agile Delphi process, we did 2 rounds. The objectives of this agile Delphi process was to obtain rigorous criteria for the safe implementation of teleworking, and also obtain accurate information about current and future situations of teleworking. This is like general conclusions on how the state of the art of teleworking is, so to say. Remark that the effective total length of the whole process took less than 3 weeks, while in general, in traditional Delphi processes, just to conclude the first round tends to take around 1 month, as we have read in the literature, right? The definition of the objectives and the question forms by coordinators took around 3 days in total. Answering to question forms and feedback by the experts took around 10 days, and the analysis and discussion of results for the coordinators took around 4 days, so in total less than 3 weeks. I would like to say something on this regard. At this moment, we have considered in the app to provide automatically the statistics, level of consensus, confidence intervals, and some other metrics in order to evaluate this automatically, this level of consensus and so on and so forth. But at the moment, what we can provide is data about the evaluation of experts. So we can export this data and then analyze the data by means of some other tools like Microsoft Excel or Google Spreadsheets, right? So yeah, we can compute nice statistics easily, but at the moment the app is not providing at this very moment that kind of confidence intervals and so on and so forth. After performing the Agile Delphi process, we found some interesting conclusions. Some of them may look obvious, but remark to say that they come from the opinion of the 17 experts, right? So teleworking already existed, right? But due to COVID-19, the implementation came to stay. Okay, all the experts, almost all the experts, agree in that this trend of teleworking is going to grow more and more. Also, in general, it has been identified that prevention has not been considered among companies within the modality of teleworking. Notice that the main problems or risks, safety and health related risks, are related to musculoskeletal disorders. This is the main type. Risks from using screens like the smartphone, tablets, computers. That's the secondary main type of identified risks. Electrical risks like electrocution or falls, etc. Okay, some risks are hard to be identified because you cannot monitor what's happening inside a house, rights of privacy, etc. So it's a complex thing, and in general, it has not been considered. There are cases where, yeah, it has been fully considered, but they are not common, right? Also, it has been identified that, in general, the companies have not provided enough material for the correct teleworking of their employees, like proper chairs where to sit, or proper mouses or additional screens, etc. Material, right? In order to work from their houses or the homes. One of the main advantages of teleworking is flexible hours. This was identified by the experts as the main advantage. However, these flexible hours takes to a major problem, and is the lack of digital disconnection. Something that tends to happen is that people gets hooked to the smartphones and they continue checking for the email after work. So it's like a continuous work day without disconnection. It also affects the conciliation, family conciliation, the reduction of quality time with the relatives, with the friends. But okay, it's something that should be considered. And it has been observed that productivity in general has not been affected in a negative way, so to speak, in those positions where teleworking has applicability, because obviously there are some positions where teleworking is not possible, right? It's common sense. Likewise, professional development and evolution don't seem to be negatively impacted too. So apparently there is not a risk of losing opportunities in professional working when applying the teleworking modality. About the criteria, concluded criteria, well, there are more criteria, but let's pose the three important ones. It's a must to carry out an effective prevention plan based on an initial evaluation to adopt the necessary measures for the implementation of teleworking. Okay, this is mandatory. Also, it's necessary for companies to provide the appropriate means for the correct performance of teleworking by their employees. And finally, it will be convenient to apply measures to promote digital disconnection and to facilitate social and interpersonal relationships, as it was observed too that the personal relationships among workers and co-workers, and in some cases even between the co-worker and the spouse or husband, was affected negatively, right? So it's important also to take measures to facilitate these social relationships, to make them good again.
So, as we can see, Agile Delphi seems an efficient and useful way to extract conclusions from a question that we can ask to yourselves, but with an objective way. So we are working this on a specific topic, as we are gonna see on a visual demo from the application that we have just developed. Note that we are using iOS, but it could be used the same way with Android. It can also be downloaded from the App Stores, as you can see, from Play Store for Android or App Store for iOS, and they can operate over the internet, so you're not gonna have troubles if your friend or partner has Android and you have iOS. So it can operate on both platforms, and we're working on having web and also Windows, Mac, and Linux platforms soon. So
I would like to include here that if you're interested in use this application, the one that you can download from Google Play or App Store, please contact us, right? Because at the moment, the app, okay, you can download it, you can execute it, but if you want to use it, you require an invitation. So please, feel free to send us an email. Later on, you will see our contact addresses, and we will send you an invitation in order to create an user with your own custom password, and you will be able to define your own Agile Delphi processes and to invite from your account more users in order to get benefit of the app, right? You can use it freely.
But anyways, we have developed a register process, but since we are in beta right now. We don't manage to enable it yet. So yes, as Lizardo said, just feel free to contact us if you wanna test the application. Okay, so we continue with the demo. As we can see soon on the screen. Yep. Maybe more soon. We're gonna see two simulators, yeah, of the iPhone. On the left hand we have an iPhone 8, and the right hand we have an iPhone 12. It works on all models of iPhone, size 6 or maybe 5. And then I'm gonna create a process as a coordinator from the right side, and on the left side I'm gonna stay as an expert. We haven't said that the application is real time, so if you have partners that maybe manage to coordinate the rounds with you, you can invite them and edit the process in real time. So at first, I'm gonna create a process. Let's say, since we're working on a Spanish platform on the right side, I'm gonna put it on Spanish, but we are gonna change the language later. Okay, so it got created here, but it's empty, and it does not have an image. It has no questions, it has no rounds, obviously it has no participants.
It's vanilla, plain vanilla.
Yeah, of course. So at first I'm gonna customize my profile so the other users can identify me better. I'm gonna browse to pick a profile picture, but since this is an emulator, I'm gonna pick a waterfall. As I can see here, that's my user, and I can just manage it the way I want. I can upload my curriculum, my CV. I can change my language, let's say to English, on real time. Somehow it did not change, but yeah, I can see the chat here as well. And here as well I can see the process. I'm gonna change it to Spanish so we can just keep the process with the Spanish language.
At the moment we have considered English, Spanish, and Deutsch, and German. So yeah, in the future we will count with more languages like French, Italian, etc. But at the moment we have released the application with those 3 languages.
Yeah, here I just invited myself. I'm gonna invite another account, so I have several accounts on the process. I'm gonna check the email on my phone because I don't want to open the email on the presentation, obviously. It sends you a password email, so you can just log in with it. So that's my account, and the password that has just been sent from the email that must be changed on the first login.
For security concerns.
Yeah, so here you got the onboarding. Since this mobile phone is on Spanish, it's showing Spanish language, because at first it takes the mobile phone language, but on the other hand, if you're logging in, it takes the user language. I'm gonna put my name because obviously it does not know my email or a password. Here I can set my new password, and that's it. That's the whole configuring process that I just need to enter the platform. As we can see, I'm coordinator here, and if I open the process, let's say I change the profile the picture of the process, it will be real-time handled on the other devices. It happens to all. I mean, if I change the process name,
the title, the objectives, anything.
Yeah, everything is real-time, so you can collaborate with your partners. So if they don't like something, you can just view it without reloading anything. So let's say we are creating a process about security over internet, and the description may be like, yeah, it's descriptive actually, and it does not make any sense just to to let them know what it's about. The objectives are more important because those are the objectives that you just want to extract from the whole process. So I'm gonna take Lisa out of the lead about to picking it.
No worries. This is a test. It's just to show off how the application works, so we can continue with
So
something like test.
what does he
one,
say?
okay? The main important thing here to show is that you can define here the question form quickly and easily. Define the rounds, the different rounds you can configure. Also, you can invite experts that maybe are not at the moment in the platform, but you can easily, by typing the email address, to send them an invitation. Okay, the app takes care of that, sends the invitation via email, so they can simply log in the app by using the credentials provided. And also it would be nice to show that the coordinators have the rights to see which experts have acknowledged the invitation, which ones haven't, but the experts among them cannot see what other experts are in the process.
Yeah, and that's what I'm gonna see right now. Since I was an expert with my secondary account that we can show on the left, and now I'm just an expert. As you could see, it will real time change it. So if I remove some expert from the process, he will see immediately on his screen, which is on the left, actually.
Everything happens in real time.
Yeah. So here I invite my expert, and as an expert, I can just see the process, but not treat it at all.
You have not the rights. You just can accept the invitation or not, or decline it.
Yeah. On the other hand, I can see any experts, so it's fully anonymous, but I can see the coordinators just for make sure that everything's working fine, and I can chat them. But since it's actually over me, I'm not gonna chat myself.
Yeah.
Here I can see the finished rounds, but since we have no rounds yet, I can participate as well. It's gonna say that the round is not needed, but let's configure a round here.
In the meantime, I would like to remark that the chat is a very interesting feature, and it simplifies and reduces the time of communication among the experts and the coordinators, right? If an expert has a specific question or doubt or a suggestion at any time, that expert can automatically establish a chat with the coordinator and pose the question or the comment or whatever, right? It's not necessary to send emails, to make phone calls, etc. Everything goes through a chat, real-time chat, similar to WhatsApp, Telegram, or any other instant messaging apps. But in this case, within the very same agile Delphi.
Yeah, so here we can just put some questions. The first is very basic. Do you like the app? It's a Likert scale. So we can just say about we are agree or we not agree as a normal Likert.
Agreement or disagreement.
Yeah. That's Boolean. So you can say you
yes
work
no.
from home or not. And that's a more complex question. So you can just pick the most personalized agreement. Let's say
the thing
I have kids. The example.
The category 1, right?
Yeah.
There are like 6 or 7 types of different questions.
Yeah, because I could pick also yeah.
weighted
yeah.
categories.
Weighted, I mean.
Yeah. So you can evaluate the
yeah. So it's not about picking one. It's about
of every answer. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are
putting some weight over it.
And there is a variety of questions, answers you can configure for your question form.
But this one feels more like qualitative. So we can say just more like
open question. So
yeah.
you can introduce a text.
we can say here to tell M so they tell how their environment is. Instead, so that's a more wide question, and we do not need the user to match our criteria for categories code. It will be nonsense because they may not have our knowledge or our vision. So we open the vision for the app. We configured the round, so let's start it. I'm gonna press the start button, and then the participate button on the left from the expert is just automatically open, so he can start participating now. Let's say that if the fully experts vote, the round is automatically closed, and if the time is over and they didn't all vote, it's over too. So here, as an expert, I can just see the questions that I configured previously as a coordinator. Obviously, I like the app. I work from home, and my environment is I have a dog that shots a lot, but I love her. So that's my participation. I'm gonna finish it, and as soon as I finish it, the round closes because there are no more experts.
Yeah, you are the only one.
And here on finished rounds, I can see the statistics from all past rounds. So if we extract here a conclusion, we can finish the process, and if not, we can open another round. So we could just put another limit date, another name, and
Imagine
whatever we want.
If there's not a consensus derived from the aggregation of opinions, the coordinators had the right to create as many rounds as they need, right? So they can create a second round, a third round, and so on and so forth, right? Until the process can be considered to be closed.
Yeah, and the feature of the application, besides on having more data to analyze, because now we don't have any data yet. Obviously, we are a meta program, so we can make good algorithms now, because we cannot test if they work or not. So we are opening the beta process to get more data, and the next steps are to get to work. Let's say here, when we invite a participant, if our process matches, let's say, sport, it will match the experts that have the title of sport. It analyzes also the CV that you upload here, and it has a great potential that we can explode, but by just time. It's just about time.
Yeah, recommendation of experts, as we said before, automatic analysis of the statistics, automatic aggregation, showing the results, levels of confidence among the agreement of the experts, etc.
So if I finish the process, I have to put my conclusion here. As I see, it's in beta, there might be errors, but it's only on my local machine. So as my conclusion, I will say that working from home is magical. So the process is finished, and no one, even the coordinators, can touch it at all.
It gets locked.
At all. So not editable at all, because it will make nonsense to close a process and reopen a round. Yeah. You just make another process before, or even think better before closing
a further process.
Yeah. And here I can see everything, but I cannot edit anything as well. I can look up for all the rounds, for all the questions, but nothing else. And as an expert, it's quite to be the same.
You can check the finished processes, because at the moment you don't have active processes, but you have the option to check the past processes where you participated in order to check the results.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that will be all from the demo site. We hope you enjoyed it, and let's see what the future is gonna bring us.
And if you want to participate and to use the app freely, please just let us know, right?
Yeah, because it's obviously free and free of charge.
Free of charge, yeah. Continue with the dissertation. As future work, well.
Yeah, that's what I said, and even more because we are gonna have a web app with Angular this time, so we can reuse the code, technically talking, because the app is made with Ionic, which is based on Angular-based code, so it's reusable from the front-end side, from website, Windows, iOS, Android, or even Linux.
So we will expand even more the reach of Agile Delphi.
Our target is to match as much platforms as we can. Yeah. As we said, we want to implement an email for having more accurate precision on matching from proxies and experts and even coordinators at some time if we need to.
Machine learning techniques, natural language processing as well for open questions.
Yeah, and even more kind of questions, but yeah, we need feedback from experts and from coordinators, so if you have any trouble or any suggestion, feel free to send us as well, because we will be glad to hear you.
Feedback is golden,
so
it's always welcomed. And well, finally I would say that it's we need yet to implement some improvements in the general graphic line, right, and the user experience, but it's coming, right? So thank you for your attention, thank you very much for your interest, and if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat, at YouTube channel or whatever. Even more, if you want to contact us on this slide, you have our contact emails and the QR codes containing the contact information, right? So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andre.
Yep.
Thank you, Lizardo. You have presented a very interesting and useful tool, surely of interest to our attendants, mostly experts or interested in the generation of criteria. So, yeah, we have collected some of the questions. So this is I will ask you to remain there because we are connecting with the next part of today's session, which is dedicated to asking questions to you and the other speakers, but given that you are already there, we are going to start with you, okay?
Perfect.
Is that okay?
It's perfect.
Thank you very much. So, we have, around 3 questions. The first of the questions says, has this app been designed and is useful only in the field of occupational health and safety? I can think of experts in other fields who need to converge and agree about criteria. Can they use the app?
Totally.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, as we said at the beginning, yeah, even if we design the application oriented toward OHS, actually the Delphi process, and in this case the evolution of Delphi process, that is Agile Delphi, can be used in mostly every field. Yeah, as long as you need some experts in order to produce objective criteria, you can use it. You can reach a consensus by following the process, the methodology. So you can.
So experts in many other fields can download the app and they can just log in, they can use it.
Sure.
And of course they are going to be able to reach a consensus about any kind of criteria they are interested in. So
yeah, engineering or any other field is not tied to
we mean
OHS.
That by coordinator, you are just a user that once you get a consensus and as an expert, it doesn't properly means you are an expert of the material. It means you use a platform, for example. I could make a process that says, do you like the app, and get feedback from my own app with the Agile Delphi process as well.
Okay, that's great then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I will read another question we have here for you. I will read it as I got it. It says, great, Lizardo and Andre. In which fields do you envision Agile Delphi can be useful? It's kind of related to the same one. So if you want to add something, that is
usefulness of imagine I mean a variety, a lot of different fields. Imagine, for instance, to reach objective criteria in order to tackle most of the problems derived from COVID-19. Okay, instead of having this committee of experts, you could use the app in order to reach objective conclusions based on rigorous opinions of experts worldwide, because this app is international. Yeah. I mean, the scope is international, it's not just regional or national. So you could get all the feedback from a huge amount of experts worldwide. Even more, as Andrei said, the app is not limited, and one of the benefits of the app is that it's not limited to 30 experts, because the complexity of aggregating and analyzing the results manually, given that you get all the results automatically collected, aggregated, and even in some cases interpreted, you could count on hundreds or thousands of experts in the matter of diseases, contagious diseases, epidemics, pandemics, and get a set of unified criteria, worldwide unified criteria.
Yeah.
It could be an example, right?
An update from the application will be that the same process has multiple languages, so people from China, from the United States, or from France can vote on the same process and say their opinion. For not talking about COVID, because it's mainstream actually. Let's say we both ride motorcycles, but we see the motorcycles on another totally different way. So if we ride to America, they see the motorcycles as well on the same way. If they don't have a glass to put on, it's not like a vehicle actually. So if we mix that opinions, we are gonna get an objective consensus from worldwide people.
For instance,
essentially, it has a lot of potential to be used in a wider context than the one that has been used until now.
That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have another question. If someone says, if I apply for an account to use Agile Delphi to create my own Delphi process, who will be able to access the data generated during the process? Just me and the owners of the app?
And the ones that you invite as coordinators, I guess. The experts can access the results of the process, right? But export the data is just available for the coordinators of the process.
Yeah, but our proposal is to make the application to have everything you need. So if you need a chart or something or something you can do with Air language, we can implement it as well on the app. So just ask for it, and we will take care to implement it as soon as possible.
Yeah, so essentially you might, those that are going to have access are the ones that you give them permission to. So
yep.
Thank you very much. And from students we have also a question. Someone says, how challenging, maybe for you who are junior, how challenging was it to start developing an app from scratch in a field in which you have no previous experience? I mean, usually computer science and engineering students do not know anything about the Delphi method. Did it represent a hard or complex learning curve?
Well, actually every field you want to work on is a challenge, because if you want to give your best, you can just take that football is having a ball and playing with it. You gotta know the good players, the bad players, and the best players, and match them and know why the best player is the best player. So here I had the best player from that I have known from Delphi, and it's just about knowing the process from scratch. If you're not interested on what you're making, you're not gonna get anything that you're gonna be proud of. This app cost us many nights. You're not gonna stay a single night if you are not in touch with your job. It does not have a learning curve, because you just associate the way the other fields of known are with yours. So if you work on more well-known process, you're gonna get it easier, let's say. it's never easy. But if you like motorcycles, you're gonna start working on Ionic application if you don't know Ionic on a motorcycle application, let's say. So you know motorbikes, and you're gonna stay in touch with motorbikes, but you have no idea about Ionic, because which is the technology.
Yeah.
So you can just learn from what you know to what is unknown for you.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
I-
Then the key is the alliances and maybe having working teams. That is the key.
Yeah.
Team working.
That's the thing. Team working and choose or fall into a great team, as we are. I would say we are very lucky because we work very well together and we have the support of a great team of experts and professionals, as Dr. Antonio Mescua, Maribel Sanchez, Fuensanta Medina, Germán. So yeah, it's a pleasure and a privilege to be able to work in such a great team, because all of us are important pieces in the process. So when you get stuck, you can go to the others and ask for support or advice. And yeah, obviously if you are working together during nights, finding the proper partner is really very, very important.
Yeah, and enjoy what you do. If you don't not enjoy what you do, you are killing yourself. Just do what you love.
Yeah, enjoy the adventure.
Yeah,
the process.
Okay. Yeah. Nice reflection.
Thank you.
Very much. Thank you very much, Lizardo and Andre.
Thank
so
you.
we can then continue with the questions for Carlos Torresilla. Carlos presented the first presentation we have today. It was a Delphi-based expert judgment method. So just to confirm, Carlos, can you hear me? We are checking whether he's listening to us. Carlos?
Can you hear me? I can hear you loud and clear. Hello?
Carlos, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you. Okay, we can then start with some questions for you, and thank you for waiting. I know it has been a long journey today, but now it's time to work with you again. So thank you very much for waiting. We have collected some questions for you. The first of them, I will read it for you as I got it. It says, you have said, ensure the selected panel of experts is composed by real experts in the field and not biased in any sense.
I have lost the sound, Germán, so I cannot hear you. I see you, but I cannot hear you.
Okay. I will repeat it then.
Yeah.
Maybe I can use the other micro. Yeah, please. Yeah. Thank you, Lizardo and Andre. Can you hear me now, Carlos?
Yes, perfectly well.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, the first question we got is a quotation about something you said in your presentation, and it says, you have said, ensure the selected panel of experts is composed by real experts in the field and not biased in any sense. It seems like a hard task to try to control any biases. So what kind of biases may be there, and what method do you think we can use to reduce any bias?
Well, this is a very good question. I think it goes directly to the core of the Delphi method. So you can have several types of bias because depending on the problem you are trying to solve, you might have geographical bias because the same problem might not be seen the same way by different cultures or countries in the world. So if you're speaking about safety and work is not the same thing in Europe than in Africa than in Asia. So you might want to see different point of views depending on location. But the same comes to gender balance because safety at work might not be the same for male than for female because female might imply pregnancy and therefore you might need to take care of particular issues that a male might not have. So you need to think on your problem and you need to think what are the bias your problem can have. And based on that, try to identify a panel that might take into account all the different points of view on that problem. Not all the bias will be the same regarding all the problems, but it's important that the one designing the Delphi process takes them into account. Another bias is that to make sure experts are independent, in the sense that they are not linked in any way to the researcher. So if he or she can be accused of, selecting his or her friends to conduct the process. One element I have liked a lot from the previous presentation from Lisandro and Andre is the fact that you can select experts based on their CV directly. So systems like this one are of great help in order to reduce bias. But if not, always think in the problem, think on what are the elements that might affect your problem or make it not objective, and address them to make sure your panel is not biased. Of course, sometimes the number of experts is reduced, you might need to accept a bit of bias. Maybe you are dealing with something that is only studied in your university or in your country. In this case, explain it. I did that because there is number of experts. That way, you tackle the problem upfront. I hope I was able to answer the question.
Well, yeah, excellent. Actually, it was very insightful. So, thank you very much, Carlos, for your answer to this question. We can then go to the next question we got. And it says, according to your experience, how many rounds are necessary to reach consensus? We know that there may be many variables affecting this, but according to your experience, do you think there is a number you can point to?
Yeah, in general, from the literature I have read, and from the research I have done myself, a number around 3 rounds is when you normally reach stability and consensus. Normally, first round is in general exploratory, and then in the second round, the experts, they position themselves, they move, and in the third, you might reach stability. So I would say indeed 3 is the classical number for Delphi methods. You can go further if you have time and if you need it.
Okay, thank you very much. That is very useful also for the Agile app that Lizardo and Andre have just presented, because they can have a general idea with the concept that you have introduced. Thank you very much. We have one more question, Carlos, for you. I will read as I got it for you. Wonderful presentation, Carlos. Thanks a lot. I have a question for you regarding the data processing. Is it required a huge amount of statistical knowledge for this stage as the Delphi technique? Thank you.
I would say no, but it also depends how far you wanna get. So in general, I have seen very valuable and insightful Delphi approaches that have used mainly descriptive statistics, mean, median, standard deviation, so concept that any researcher is familiar with. Of course, if you want to maybe go deeper and you want to explore a bit of inference statistics, you can use any of the statistics I mentioned, Kendall W, etc. So you go a step ahead. Then a bit of knowledge of R and how you process those statistics with R language is useful. You might want to use SPSS also if you have access to this support package. And of course, if you want to go a bit beyond, you can go to the simple concordance analysis, which is a bit a step beyond. And even as Andres did, by taking our approach and moving it a bit forward, you can go for the Kendall clusters, etc. So I would say that if you are not familiar with statistics, you might stay in your comfort zone with descriptive. But if you have a bit of background, it's also always maybe good to go a bit deeper. So not as a precondition, but yes, it's a nice to have.
Amazing, Carlos. Thank you very much again for your presentation, for having us today, and for waiting for us up to the end of the journey. Thank you very much for your answers. And I have to say that we may receive even more questions that we are going to collect and share with you. And we are going to upload the answers that you provide us in our website so that they become available to everyone. Thank you very much, Carlos.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you. We have collected also some questions for Andres Leonardo. However, Andres cannot answer to these questions at the moment. So we are going to collect them. We are going to have his answers to such questions, and we are going to publish them in our website. All the attendees, all registered attendees are going to receive an email with the specific address where you are going to reach our publication of these questions. Thank you very much. We can then move to the next and last part of today's journey. We are going to present then the call for final projects that we have prepared. So give me a second. Yes, we can start opening the discussion with specific questions. No, the questions now, I'm sorry. Yes, the last point we have is the presentation of the call for projects that we have published this year. This call has been led by Dr. Antonio de Amezcua. Professor Antonio de Amezcua is a full professor at Carlos III University of Madrid. He is the founder of the Software Engineering Lab at the Department of Computer Engineering, and his current main line of research is digital transformation through the innovation of digital processes and products. Committed to excellence in public higher education, he participated as deputy director of the School of Engineering in the setting up of the Carlos III University campus in Leganés. His research work on the standardization of software engineering, management, and quality has been applied both in consulting companies and advanced IT technology. Telefónica, ISDISA, Accenture, Atos, Ernst & Young's, Everest, as well as in public organizations. So the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Economy, Employment, and Competitiveness of the Community of Madrid. He has more than 30 years of experience in the design, deployment, and delivery of master's and bachelor's degree courses in computer engineering, and is an active member of the European Certification and Qualification Association. He has supervised 14 doctoral theses and more than 100 master and undergraduate theses. Several students have attended our call and have started working with us. Some of the projects that we are supervising and that Professor Amezcua is been leading are the following. So first, one of the projects is harassment in the workplace prevention by Juan Sanchez Esquivel. Also, fostering fellowship in work teams by Susana Duran. A tool to identify the elements of the prevention ecosystem using system dynamics by Raúl Ortiz Mazarro. Misogyny identification in Spanish texts using deep learning models by Ignacio Talavera. Repository of sensors and calibration parameters in mobile devices for future implementation in occupational health and safety apps by Javier Lubillo. And also nursing home with secure communication by Raúl López Rayo. We are going then to see a presentation by Professor de Amezcua, and after his presentation, we are going to see some of the advances of specific projects of some of our students. Thank you.
Maybe you are asking yourself some question as, for example, why an app store? It's supposed that an app store is a business of leading tech companies such as Apple or Google. Isn't it a crazy idea for a researcher working in the occupational health and safety domain to create an app store? Why direct a bachelor thesis? A student is supposed to do a bachelor thesis in order to get an undergraduate degree. It's supposed that the students don't have any working experience nor knowledge of OHS. Then, what's the ultimate purpose of doing this activity? It's about making new ideas happen, to solve important OHS problems. In other words, it's about making disruptive innovation happen. Let me give you 6 key points to explain that it's not a crazy idea to work with engineering students. First, as students of engineering degrees, their mindset is focused on solving problems. They have a growth mindset. The growth mindset means failure is an opportunity to grow. Second, they belong to Generation Z. That is, they have grown up with access to the internet and mobile digital technology from a very young age. As digital natives, they believe that digital technology will help to solve social problems. Actually, they are the first social generation connected to the World Wide Web. Third, they like challenges, but not any kind. The best students love to accept challenges that involve building a better world. Fourth, we are in the digital era, called the fourth industrial generation. This era is characterized not by doing projects, but developing products, especially digital products. To build an app and upload it to an app store is a real challenge. Did you know that there is no category in the App Store for OHS yet? Unbelievable, right? Fifth, here is where ideas happen. By joining OHS experts who provide essential knowledge of the problems and needs of OHS, as well as confirming the value of ideas and prototypes created by the students. And last but not least, altogether, students, experts in OHS, and professors running a scientific method for creating innovative digital products, providing an atmosphere where all of us learn new skills, unlock our mindsets, and make us feel more valuable and happy. Wouldn't it be remarkable to promote a global culture about occupational health and safety through an app store?
Hello, my name is Susana, and I am currently studying the degree in computer engineering. In addition to that, I recently started an online course in business administration called the Power MBA, because I realized that my administrative profile wasn't as good as it should be. As for my hobbies, I have a lot of them, who doesn't, right? But if I had to choose, I would say reading, teaching and working with children, nature, hiking and walking my dog. I hope that in the future I will still have free time to enjoy what I like the most and to continue learning new things. The aim of my bachelor thesis is to avoid the psychosocial discomfort that some work environments generate, such as stress, lack of motivation, discomfort with the team. To achieve this, we try to promote fellowship among the members of the group, not only for the project to go forward, but mainly for the well-being of our colleges. This idea came about by asking people around me what occupational hazards they found in their jobs. Most of them were psychosocial risks, so I decided to make an app that could mitigate not one, but all of those risks. The first difficulty that I found was limiting the aspects that I wanted to work with in the app. My idea grew and grew as I was developing it, but I reached a point in which I had to stop or I was never gonna finish. It was quite difficult to say up to here. On the other hand, a second difficulty was when I started transferring my prototype to a real implementation, since I had never done anything like that before. But with some help, motivation, dedication and commitment, I have managed to overcome all the difficulties that have arisen. There are three main innovative aspects in this app. Number one, its profile has an emoji next to it that expresses how the user feels at that moment. That way you stop seeing names and start seeing people with feelings. Number two, there are weekly surveys to evaluate your degree of satisfaction with your partner so that each one receives feedback and know how to improve themselves. And finally, number three, there is a points game, which are given between colleges as a thank you or as a reward. With these points, the user can buy badges that are shown on their profile. I think that it is difficult to choose what I like the most about doing my bachelor thesis, since there have been many things. One of them is the idea itself, because I know that I am investing my time and my knowledge in something that can be of great help to many people one day. On the other hand, I was delighted to have the possibility to unleash my imagination when designing the app. Also, I like learning new things, and so it has been implementing this app. Finally, I cannot forget to mention all the people who have surrounded me through this process. It is important to divide the future into two different timeframes. In the medium term, I would like to continue implementing my app and be able to launch it into the market so that one day any user can enjoy it. In the long term, I would like to feel like a person that has lived many experiences with a hopeful future before her, like working at Google in a foreign country or setting up my own globally successful company. Dreaming is free, isn't it?
Hello, my name is Raúl Ortiz, and I have been working on the development of a software tool to support the structuring of complex problems in systems dynamics language, modeling the ecosystem of prevention for the community of Madrid. I am a hard-working and cooperative person. I am also kind, friendly, and attentive. Some of my hobbies are traveling around the world and enjoying live music. First of all, you might be asking, what is the thing of system dynamics? And it is okay, since it is not that known. System dynamic is an approach to implement system thinking in the process of modeling complex problems in which there is a lot of uncertainty and in which many variables affect the system behavior, and in which there are many dependencies and correlations. For representing system dynamics models, very specific elements of a complex system must be identified: the stocks, the flows, the variables, and also the feedback loops around the flows of the system. This is something usually done by specialists with expertise in modeling and simulation of complex systems. But what if we don't have such a specialist at hand and still want to start modeling a complex system like the prevention ecosystem in the community of Madrid? We realize of the need of counting on a tool that helps newborns in the final modeling, letting them to iterate, make mistakes in the process of modeling, and still make corrections until an acceptable model is reached. The main idea is to give people the opportunity to start modeling in system dynamics without being a specialist. This is also something that helps modelers in the process of better understanding a problem before starting to simulate or even propose a solution to such a problem. My contribution is the software tool System Dynamics Elicitor. It is a software tool that allows users to create projects containing all the information of a complex system by using the language of system dynamics. That is, the complexity of system is represented using stocks, flows, and variables. The system allows users to add the elements, to label them as one or other type of component, and to represent such component in a Forester diagram that represents the system. System Dynamics Elicitor essentially helps new modelers in the process of iterating over the complexity of a problem and identifying its system dynamics elements before going to simulate it using tools like Benzim, Stella, etc. Some of the advantages are: easy to use by new modelers. Second, it contributes to the discussion on the structure of models at an early stage. Third, more than one but several users can log in and edit, add, or delete components. And fourth, it stores and exports information of models in different formats, like PDF for the discussion in directory boards, or to report other modelers in an easy-to-read format, and XML and JSON, so that other systems can import and process the information for going ahead with simulation in the field of system dynamics. We focus on using System Dynamics Elicitor for modeling the ecosystem of prevention in the community of Madrid. We have processed the information of a formal description of the Ventura model of prevention and have identified the elements of such idealized system. By using System Dynamics Elicitor, we identify the need of helping to evolve the maturity of the main elements of the prevention system: the prevention plan, the risk assessment, the preventive action, and the preventive planning. We are pointing toward using this application with some more experts in the field of prevention who can help us to identify the elements which are key to evolve the current state of prevention, first at a local level, but starting to use it in a wide level. By this means, we are essentially using system thinking, computer science, and complex modeling to evolve one of the sectors that better cares for people: occupational health and safety, OHS. We are trying to contribute to the health of workers by, from a strategic level, improving the vision that in general the stakeholders have of the sector. And what next? We have just introduced our Systems Dynamics licensure to the Systems Dynamics community, who accepted to be presented in the Systems Dynamics International Conference in Chicago next July. Now it is time to introduce the app to experts in ODS and get their feedback. By this, we are giving the expert in OHS a tool to foster a wider vision through a technological tool that for sure is going to have a significant impact. We hope you like it. Hello.
Hi, I'm Juan, and I'm a computer science and engineering degree student currently undergoing my last term. I'm a curious person, someone who enjoys taking on new challenges, traveling, and learning in the process. In the long term, I want to develop and deploy some kind of technological solution that has a direct positive impact on society. The objective of my bachelor thesis was to develop a technological solution that eases the communication between employees and their human resources department, increasing contact between them and removing one of the most significant barriers some employees face whenever having an issue at the workplace. The motivation for my bachelor thesis was my deep interest in the development of technological solutions that improve people's lives. The prospect that if well developed, the infrastructure could be deployed and therefore help someone filled me with determination. One of the greatest challenges of this project was starting the development from the ground up of an entire infrastructure. Moreover, the sensitivity of dealing with anonymous conversations and making sure the employee could not be identified through any data exploit by the employer, only allowing the anonymization when the employee freely agreed to, was a complicated task. For my project, establishing a direct line of communication that resulted familiar to the users and had the possibility of being anonymous between HR and employees. This approach to internal communication breaks with the more traditional methods that in some cases, unintentionally, make contact between both parties difficult. The solution developed tries to bring together HR and employees, establishing closer relationships between the two, in the hope it results in healthier workplaces for all employees. Learning about technological solutions and architectures that I had no previous knowledge of. Also proving to myself that I'm capable of developing complex solutions to complex problems from the ground up. I would like to pursue my master's studies abroad, to gain additional knowledge on machine learning and artificial intelligence, as I believe I still have a long way to go to satisfy my curiosity and plenty to learn. In the long term, I think I'll pursue some kind of position that allows me to work in the kind of technological positions I'm more passionate about, the ones with direct positive impact to society. Therefore, after my master's, I may apply for a PhD or research position.
Thank you very much, Professor Amezcua, for preparing this set of presentations from the students. Well, we have reached the end of our journey, so I would like to invite all the members of the researchers to come here with me. And it is now time, yeah, someone else is coming. Here he comes. So, well, now it's time to thank mainly all of you, the attendees, for having joined us in this exhaustive but very fruitful day. We hope we have met your expectations, and we will be happy to receive any feedback from you. We would also like to sincerely thank our guest speakers. We know how much effort it was involved in the preparation of your interventions. Thank you very much. We would like also to thank the Regional Institute of Occupational Health and Safety and for their support and for trusting us as a team to carry out research of interest to them. We would like to thank also the organizing committee of the 5th International Conference on Information and Knowledge Systems for their trust, for accompanying us in this journey, and for allowing us to join them in their conference starting tomorrow, which we invite all our attendees to attend as well. And finally, we would like to thank the Computer Science Department and the Audiovisual Service of Universidad Carlos III de Madrid for all their support. Without them, we would not be able to carry out this event. We hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much, and see you next time.
I propose a clap for all of you.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you.
It was a pleasure.